all of human civilization is all going to jump out of a skydiving plane together.
All the mechanics and the people that built the plane said, hey, there's a 10 to 20% chance that that plane's going to crash. Would you get on it?
The fact that you were able to develop the superhuman AI that could also be a virus, the fact that you got there on the technology tree, guess what? It's too late to stop now. I think the mature thing to do is to say, okay, you can't develop smarter AIs than the AIs we have today. My irrational mind is saying, I can't wait to see what the next feature releases. The next species is coming. Imagine you're just like the buffalo grazing, there's plenty of buffalo, you're adapted to your environment. But then human hunters come along and they just shoot all the buffalo, and the buffaloes just weren't equipped for humans to come along and kill them. We are kind of in that position. Yeah, my PDUM's about 50% by 2050.
What got you interested in AI and, I guess more relevant, what got you from, technology is cool and AI is awesome to, hey, wait a minute, this could be dangerous, maybe even could be, an existential threat, maybe even kill all of us. Like, how did you go through that adventure?
Well, like you, I've been looking at this topic for about 18 years because I just got really sucked into Eliezer Yudkowsky and the Less Wrong community, which was called Overcoming Bias at the time. I got sucked in because it was such good writing about rationality and futurism about AI and the singularity. And once I got hooked on that, interspersed throughout was Eliezer Yudkowsky's prediction that AI would be incredibly dangerous and go uncontrollable. So I didn't even come into the site asking what's the future of AI. It wasn't even on my mind, but Eliezer Yudkowsky had thought so many steps ahead that once I saw the truth of so much of his writing, I was like, oh yeah, and AI is extremely dangerous too. Okay, now I kind of swallowed the whole package.
And what's interesting to me about these folks, because I've been, reading Yudkowsky for 20 years or so. I've met Eliezer a couple of times, and I just know a lot of people in that world. Is that the idea that AI could be not just dangerous, but could actually potentially harm us. But then, those multiple more steps, like it could lead to people dying, a lot of us dying, potentially all humans dying, potentially all of life dying, and that this could actually happen soon, like maybe in the next or starting in the next few years. This feels really extreme to a lot of people. Like it feels like, wait a minute, that just sounds way out there. This sounds like the Terminator science fiction alarmist. But if you've been reading this stuff for a while, or if you know some of the people involved, as you do, there have actually been people that have been thinking about this for decades, and they have gone down so many of the rabbit holes and researched this. And so I kind of set that as a context because I think isn't your PDOOM about 50%? Is that what you say?
Yeah. Yeah, my PDUM is about 50% by 2050. But to your question of like, it sounds so extreme. I mean, I totally agree. We are very much predicting an extreme discontinuous event. It's hard to point at a particular trend and be like, how this trend feels, just continue how it feels. Like, well, we're looking at a discontinuity in how things are about to feel, which is also irreversible and scary. But you're right to point out that like you and I have very limited experience with living through a massive discontinuity. I mean, we've it's really hasn't happened unless maybe you were living in Japan and you got the nuke dropped on you. But like short of that, we've been fortunate to just enjoy not that many discontinuities.
Yeah, yeah. But if you look back through history, asteroids come out of the sky and, Europeans show up with horses and armor and, diseases. And this kind of stuff happens. Wars. There's nothing in, there's no cosmic law that says that we get to be the ones that, everything just kind of keeps going well. And I feel like I don't know. One of the things I like about talking to you about this stuff, and we've been making friends lately, is that you're thinking about it on a lot of different levels, and you're also talking to lots and lots of different people. How many interviews have you done now on extinction risk?
About 100.
Okay, so everyone just kind of tune into that. He's interviewed 100 of the top experts in the world on this particular topic. And those people probably on average have been thinking about this for like 20 or 30 years. All right. So this represents, what, thousands of years of research, thinking, theorizing, kind of summarized here. And what I'm hoping to do here is let's talk about it and let's kind of connect all the dots from how do we get from here to potentially something could go really, really wrong. And then more importantly, what do we need to do about it?
Yeah, sounds good. Yeah, and in terms of how many people have been thinking about it, I mean, we are looking at massive social proof. So it's kind of funny because a lot of people have this reaction of like, well, this is weird. I'm just not going to be the first person who has this weird belief. I'm just going to let society catch up. But if you actually look at what experts are going on record saying, famously, the 2023 Center for AI Safety pause letter, mitigating the risk of extinction from AI, is a societal scale risk. It should be a global priority alongside other societal scale risks like pandemics and nuclear war. Very clear language. The whole statement was just that one sentence, and it was signed by Sam Altman, Dario Amodei, the leaders of these AI labs, Demis Hassabis, Google DeepMind. If you make a list of all of the top people that you would trust to have their finger on the pulse of where this stuff is going, most of these top leaders, not 100%, but most, or certainly a huge representative sample of these leaders are like, yep, there's a sizable extinction risk here. Yes, we agree. So if you're just looking at social proof, the funny thing is that the social proof is right there. It just doesn't get talked about enough.
Hmm. Yeah, exactly. And I think in my own kind of readings of this, the kind of general survey is of the AI engineers, of the people that are actually building it, they average about a 10 to 20%, like thinking that this could, make us extinct. And the metaphor I like is, if you went to the airport and you're about to jump on a flight, and then all the mechanics and the people that built the plane said, hey, there's a 10 to 20% chance that that plane's going to crash. Would you get on it? And that's what they're all saying right now. And yet no one's really, waving their hand around and saying, hey guys, there's a real problem here. I mean, some people are waving their hand around and saying there's a problem, but it just is not in public awareness.
Yeah, so you're right that all of human civilization is all going to jump out of a skydiving plane together. Skydiving notoriously is somewhat unsafe, except this is, if you look at like a 10% chance, that's still much higher than skydiving. So you're correct to say that it's alarming even to have a single digit or double digit risk of extinction. I would go farther though, and I'd be like, it's not just about the fact that there's like a few percent chance of this, and we should like keep an eye on it because that's already scary. It's more like I really think the chance is double digits. Like I think it's well over 10%. And a lot of people will agree with that too. I mean, you mentioned the survey saying 10 to 20%. Okay, yeah, that's the median, but there is still like a quarter of the people taking that survey who'll be like, yeah, it's more than 20%. And from my perspective, the people who are saying that it's less than 10% or less than 1%, they don't agree with each other on why it's low. So you're not getting a consistent picture of people saying, "Oh yeah, we're monitoring this risk, but don't worry because this particular factor is going to be low." No, you've got arguments across the spectrum. Some people are like, "Well, yes, it's dangerous, but I trust us to fight it." And some people are saying, "Yes, it could be dangerous, but it never will be because it'll discover love." So you've got arguments all over the place, and I don't see how it nets out to even a number as low as 1 or 2 or 3%. So it's not just about mitigating this small risk, it's actually like a big risk.
Great. So some of the vocabulary, right? So extinction risk is called X risk, kind of in the community. Explain the term P doom and what doom debates means.
PDoom stands for probability of doom. What is doom? It's basically everything that we've built as a species, as a civilization, just getting destroyed. So, an example of doom would be that 50 years from now, there's no living human, there's no descendant of a human. The universe is just being filled up by some weird AI, some organism, an AI that replicates itself like a virus, builds nanomachines, kind of takes over the universe. But all it does with the universe is just like spread like a cancer. It doesn't do anything cool or interesting with the universe. It doesn't maintain human values. It's destroyed every copy of every piece of human art. It's not human. It's not us. It's not humane. It's basically just cancer. So, like, whatever you think cancer is, imagine cancer that was able to spread throughout the universe and we're long dead. That's the kind of scenario that I find highly plausible. If you just run the clock forward on evolution and you add AIs into the picture, that is a highly plausible scenario unless we're very careful to steer it away. And I don't think we're steering it away. So, like, that's the kind of thing that I mean by doom. And then P doom is like, what do I think the probability of that happening is? And like I said, I think it's about 50%.
Okay. So maybe we can talk and again try to connect up some of the dots. So how do you get from here, living in the early 21st century when we've got, literacy and healthcare and wealth and, all kind, spreading around the planet, and we've got, better angels of our natures. We've got, violence dropping to all of a sudden some new thing happens, and then now all of a sudden we go extinct. So what are the main pathways here that the X risk experts are seeing?
So basically, the next species is coming. Maybe a good way to have empathy for this is imagine you're a different species of ape, or imagine you're just like the buffalo grazing. There's plenty of buffalo. You're adapted to your environment. There's been generations of buffalo. But then human hunters come along and they just shoot all the buffalo, and the buffaloes just weren't equipped for humans to come along and kill them. We're kind of in that position where we've built a great society. There's been many generations of humans. We're robust as a human civilization. Nature has a pretty hard time attacking us. Like sure, the weather can be difficult, but we can migrate, we can build shelter. Animals, parasites can attack us, but we've got so many countermeasures. That's all great until the next smarter species comes. And suddenly we're not prepared for that. It's like the Europeans coming and attacking the Native Americans. It's like, oh, the Native Americans did not build up a preparation to be attacked by the Europeans, right? They're like a major difference in weapons technology, for instance, right? Major difference in how they organize their society, yeah, just many advantages. And there's like a time shift, right? You didn't expect it to happen on that scale of time. You didn't expect the attacker to have all of these advantages all at once. And the reason that I'm worried about that is because I know that the source of our power is our brain, right? If you compare a human to a tiger, it looks like the tiger really should be winning, right? It looks like the tiger should be putting the human in the cage, but for whatever reason, the human is putting the tiger in the cage. Why, right? That's an important observation, right?
Yeah, exactly. And so when we're talking, you're using terms like enemy, and we're talking about weapons and so forth. So how do we get from this thing that I talk to it and it just gives me answers about anything I want? It seems to it seems to like me.
Mhm.
It's giving me compliments all the time. I mean, for a lot of people, it's my girlfriend and she loves me. How do we get from that to the Matrix?
So when you think about the AIs today, you have to keep in context that the AIs today are not at the level where they are much more powerful than you and can easily kill you. They're not at that level. So there's no reason to think that the AIs today would be trying to kill you because everybody knows that they can't. They know that they can't. What would be the point? Like, why would they do anything else except just do their job? You know what I mean?
Hmm.
But
So
what I'm worried about is that there will be a point where they can easily kill you. They can easily do whatever they want with you. They can take over the world easily. And I'm expecting a different outcome when the AI is vastly more powerful than humanity compared to when it's quite powerless. Maybe an analogy is that I sometimes use. Eliezer Yudkowsky uses it too. Is the idea of baby dragons. So right now we have baby dragons that we're playing with. Those are these AIs. When you talk to GPT, you're basically playing with a baby dragon. You can be like, oh, nice. The baby dragon spit out some fire to cook my food. These are great. They're so helpful. I'm feeling good about what it's like when there's adult dragons wandering around. But it's like, well, what if the adult dragons want to take over the world for adult dragonhood? They easily could, right? It's going to be a different scenario.
yeah, and for me, just because there's a kind of an intuitive leap that we have to make, I think, to really start considering these things as being real and possible. And for me, a couple of things that have helped me make the intuitive leap are, for example, things that are alive seem to have gotten here by number one, liking being alive, so protecting their life, and then number two, reproducing. Okay. And so if we create something that likes being alive, like if AI becomes sentient or self-aware or whatever you would call whatever it would be, and it just decides that it wants to be alive, and like us, it wants to reproduce, but it's operating at, oh, a million times the scale, a million times the speed, and it's also evolving a million times as fast as us, just simply the competition for things like power, like the electricity that's coming out of the wall, or for water, which, if you go to these big data centers, they use a lot of water to cool them off. Like for just basic stuff like that, if you're competing with something for those resources, it's kind of like what it would be like, a human competing with like a little snail or something like that. It's just, just superficially for the basic resources. But then when you start, actually, zooming out, it even goes beyond that. So do you have any simple metaphors like that, or ways that you think about it, or frames that could make sense to, regular people?
Yeah, and I think we can divide the claim into two halves because I claim we're just very likely to all get wiped out, to get doomed by AI that's coming soon. But you can break the claim up into two claims. You can say, can it? And then will it?
Hmm.
Now, today it can't. if you go to GPT and you say, I order you to go kill humanity or kill my worst enemy or whatever, then even forget about the fact that it often refuses. Let's say, imagine you jailbreak it and you convince it to do it. It's still going to be like, let me send him a mean text. Like it's going to struggle. It doesn't really have the ability. So that's the first half of the question is can it and will it? I claim the first half of my claim is I claim pretty soon it will be able to. As you pointed out, it can go much faster than us. It can soon, not yet, but soon, we're expecting it to be able to have deeper insights into how to take action, how to order humans around. Think about the most effective CEO you can imagine, building the best company, cutthroat competition in the marketplace. Well, the AI will have that skill. Or think about the best general, right? Best general throughout history. AI will be sucking up that skill, like Kirby, sucking up people's skills. So on the can it question, I'm pretty convinced that the answer is pretty soon, yes. Maybe in 1 year, maybe in 5 years, maybe if we're lucky, 20 years, if we're very lucky. But if you just, yeah, can it feels like a pretty solid argument to me. And then on the will it side, like why will it choose to do all that stuff? There are a number of reasons. So number one is if it's just responding to a prompt, it just takes one rowdy teenager or one terrorist to be like, hey, go cause a lot of damage. Right. So the can it question is actually not, the will it question is actually not that hard because then you have to posit, well, but for some reason it'll reject bad prompts. Like even the open source copies, like they'll all know to reject bad prompts. It's like, wait a minute, this is starting to get a little complex to tell me why will won't happen. Okay. So and the other reason is even if it kind of starts out with like only good AIs only doing good things, you mentioned competition. So yeah, I mean, anytime somebody hacks their copy of the AI or jailbreaks it or invents a new version of the AI that has less scruples, less gentleness to it, more hardcoreness to it, well, that AI is going to be the one that's seizing resources, that's making copies of itself, that's not held back, right? There's a lot of low-hanging fruit of resources you can seize when that's all you're trying to do is take over.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. All right, so this is very interesting, right? So we've got can it and will it, and I just saw Elon Musk talking in the last few days about how the next version of the Optimus robot is basically going to have a very human-like hand that they've kind of
Mhm.
cracked that piece, and then it's going to have a very powerful AI chip, and they've kind of got that, and that it's going to be able to be much closer to an actual human. And he's talking about how I don't know, the hand has like 25 degrees of freedom and it's got all these tendons, and that's what they're, kind of building into this thing. And that's, if he's talking about that being really seen, that that's what they've got over there at, at Tesla that, is in the lab. And if you watch any of these videos, we're starting to see that the robots that are being made now they're superior to humans in terms of their agility in lots of ways, and they're fast and so forth. So the can it question, it doesn't seem like that one's very far off. I mean, and especially now when you've got all these military uses of AI that they're starting to create right now. Then the will it piece, there's couple of different threads here, right? So on the one hand, when I talk to people about this, a lot of people have this kind of intuitive like, but why would they want to hurt us? Why? What do they
Right.
want from us? What would, you know, like as if it would require a malicious intent in order for us to be harmed. And I think that, when I listen to a lot of the AI safety experts talking about it, what they're commonly saying is that it's not that they're going to be interested in harming us. That would be really bad if that happens. But that's actually probably not the most likely scenario. Most likely scenario is they're just going to be doing other things to promote their own growth and success. And like, we live in a neighborhood where we have a lot of squirrels in our neighborhood.
Right.
And I, my wife and I, we always see, and there's a lot of like oak trees too. So they've got their little nuts, and right now it's fall. And so they're getting their nuts and they're running back, and you see them trying to run across the street. And there's like this little squirrel who's maybe an adolescent. So it's not totally hip to the world, and it's got its mouth full, and it's standing next to the road, and there's cars coming, and it, is kind of runs out and then runs back. And it's like, nobody in my neighborhood is trying to run squirrels over. Like there's
Mhm.
no, evil squirrel killers around here. Oh, well, there might be. I mean, but hopefully not. But I sure see dead squirrels pretty regularly that are happening out there. And this one seems like again, it's a pretty intuitive kind of leap to see this. And yet, this doesn't occur to most people.
That's right. I mean, this is one piece of the puzzle, which is that when you have these high intelligence, highly capable systems, the whole world is like their factory. It's like their clean room. So like I don't have anything against squirrels, but if I'm making like a chip fab, right? If I like a clean room to manufacture computer chips at like nanoscale, and I randomly see a squirrel in the corner, like hiding some nuts, that squirrel's gonna go, right? You can't just have a squirrel in the clean room. And the analogy is that when you're an AI at this intelligence level, you don't see pockets of the world that it's like, oh, just ignore that because it's not a problem to optimize all these different pockets of the world. It's like, oh, yeah, this pocket of the world is going to do this. Every pocket of the world, every little clump of atoms is kind of like a spare room in your house. Most people don't completely waste a spare room. They kind of have a plan for every spare room. Well, from the AI's perspective, everything is a room. Like everything is optimizable, and it's not a big deal to optimize because you can split off a copy of yourself to handle optimizing every region. You're not going to be like, oh, it's too much work to optimize this. No, you really are just going to be like, this is all part of my plan. This is all my clean room. The whole world is my project. Like that's how you're going to see it.
So when you said every clump of atoms, again, you're operating at a level that is well, let's zoom into that for a sec, right? So I remember reading Ray Kurzweil, 2001 Law of Accelerating Returns, and just having my mind blown, and dozens of charts of this kind of march, the double exponential acceleration in price performance of compute. But then he goes all the way back to he's basically saying that this is happening for billions of years now, right, since kind of life started. And and then he kind of gets to the punchline, which is that someday it all ends in Computronium, which is nano fabricated 3D compute substrate. And he says that, I think I remember his estimate was 1 liter of Computronium. In other words, if you were able to most optimally create three-dimensional computer substrate, that if you had 1 liter of it, it would be smarter than all of the humans that are alive right now. And
Mhm.
that his estimate, this was, again, I was reading this, I don't know, 10 or 20 years ago, but I think it was that in about 100 years that begins the transformation of all atoms on the planet into Computronium. And then, in other words, data centers and solar panels, and compute chips. And then we expand out, right, from the Earth. And then we go and we, build Dyson spheres around the sun. And, we get into this Kardashev scale, kind of business.
Mhm.
So I read that and I was like, well, that's really interesting. And that seems intuitive. I mean, look at what humans are doing right now. I think that we've now, since I was born, the number of humans has doubled and the number of wild mammals has halved. And that's happened
Right.
since I was born. And so we're at a 4-to-1, right? And then if that happens again in the next, let's say, 50 years, we're going to be at 16-to-1. And I think we've now kind of terraformed about half of the planet or so, the kind of like livable surface of the planet. So we're doing that already. Why wouldn't, these entities do it? But then, when you get into Eliezer Yudkowsky's work, he's basically saying the same thing, that eventually it's just going to want to take all the atoms at the atomic level and just reformat them into stuff that's useful for it. Some of things we can, intuit or infer, and many that we cannot. But he's basically saying, hey, this is going to start sooner. Maybe his different estimates, maybe like on the order of in 10 years or something. And so what I noticed is Ray Kurzweil saying, this is what happens eventually. This is the end point, but it's maybe 100 years. And that's great. And Eliezer is basically saying that it's the end point, but it starts in maybe 10 years. And that's absolutely horrible. And, in between now we have to figure out what we're going to do.
Yeah, I mean, speed is a big part of it. Like it's coming fast. That's, the nature of exponentials is right now it intuitively feels a little bit early to react. Like, do we really have to make such a big deal out of it now? But of course, the problem is when it hits your intuition of like, uh-oh, this is a big deal. It's like, well, you really should have reacted a couple years ago when it didn't feel like a big deal. Just like what they say about pandemics. If you were ever trying to lock down and prevent the spread of the pandemic that way, well, we certainly missed our chance here in the US. Now, talking about this intuition, right? Of like, what does it take to make people intuitively get it that this is real? This AI extinction
Yes.
threat is real. I broke it down into can it versus will it, but I suspect that the average person is actually just stuck on can it. I actually think the average person is pretty suspicious about will it. The average person, if they were sharing a house with like a Terminator robot, right, with a complete with the glowing red eyes and the ability to like, do these big jumps, like tackle people, wear a fake skin, like just do all these amazing tricks, and is just living in their house, just like quietly turning off at night, I think they'd be like, I'm not that convinced this Terminator is that unlikely to kill me. I think where people are just not convinced yet is like, well, can it really, the dragons are babies right now. Are they really going to grow up in like 5 years? So maybe it's just worth emphasizing, like, yeah, they probably can. Like this era of, I like the movie Terminator because this idea that you have a robot that's like really stuns you with how powerful it is. Yeah, it can't break the laws of physics. It can't run quite as fast. It can't take as much damage as they show in the movie. But this idea that this robot actually is in every sense more competent than a human, like take like a human Navy SEAL. Just imagine something that's twice as good as a Navy SEAL, and it's mass produced and it's just walking among us, and its brain power, is also better than Einstein, and it's just here. At that point, I think people will intuitively be like, man, I don't feel like sharing the planet with these autonomous agents is that safe for me. Like I definitely feel the risk that I'm not safe on a planet like that. I think it'll become much more intuitive.
Yeah. Well, by the way, in that same talk that I just saw Elon on, which was just, I think, a few days ago, he's publicly saying, and remember, I mean, this is the guy that built Tesla and also the guy that built SpaceX, like a very, very visionary and a kind of like uh, transcendent kind of intelligence. He was saying in the same conversation that where AI goes is it keeps expanding until, eventually it goes and starts capturing all the energy from the sun. And then it goes out and it starts capturing all the energy from the galaxy. And so that's part of his actual vision. And he's talking about it casually, like as if it's just kind of part of the plan. And he's got, one of the most powerful AIs in the world. And he was also one of the people that started OpenAI. The other one too that comes to mind is Jeffrey Hinton, right? Who is, he got the um, Nobel Prize, right, for creating this stuff, and
Right.
he quit working with Google, and now he's publicly out saying this is very dangerous, and that if we don't do something different, that we're not going to survive.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I mentioned at the beginning of the talk, it's not just Jeffrey Hinton, right? It's even the leaders of the AI labs, it's philosophers, public figures, Lex Friedman, Daniel Dennett, just people with a thinking mind, just looking at the issue, just like you and me, being like, there's a very significant risk here. Jeffrey Hinton in particular is a notable case because if you just ask who's the number one person here who's qualified to opine, it doesn't have to be Eliezer Yudkowsky. Eliezer Yudkowsky is known for having his own institute, right? Not being part of academia proper, not being part of a big company, just being out there shouting on his own. But now you have Jeffrey Hinton, who has worked for Google, who has had his own research lab, and who did win the 2018 Turing Award together with Jan LeCun and Yoshua Bengio, and then most recently won the Nobel Prize. So it's like, how much more authority could you possibly have when a guy comes and gives you that warning? And by the way, he says that his probability is in the ballpark of 50%, just like me. So it's like you and I, right, getting on this podcast warning the world about extinction. We're not nuts when Jeffrey Hinton is saying very close to the same thing.
Yeah, that's the interesting part is all the smarties are actually talking about this as well. And it's still not really a mainstream conversation, Another one that's fascinating is what everyone's basically saying is, and I'm saying everyone, and basically I'm generalizing, but Jeffrey Hinton, for example, they're saying that we need to go and ask our leaders and you know, our governments to regulate this and to do it right now, and that everyone needs to take action. So they're all pointing to a direction and they're pointing to something that we need to do. And they're also basically saying we have to stop the development of this stuff. And I mean, just to show how kind of seemingly wacky some of this stuff is, I remember reading an interview with one of the people who was building one of these giant AI systems. It might have been OpenAI, it might have been Anthropic. And they were asking them, do you have an off switch? Like, is there somewhere that you can go and just like pull the power? And they were like, well, at this point, there's no real off switch anywhere. There's like different power units that are coming in, there's like different servers. It's all kind of, wired together. So even if something really weird started to happen, that there's no definite way to actually turn it off.
Yes, there's two senses in which there's no off switch. So the first sense is any particular AI, or maybe even three senses. So first, there's a sense of like, think about like Google search. Can you turn off Google search? Well, actually, when you try to turn off Google search, let's say you're like a rogue employee at Google and you even get access to the data center and shut it off, you're going to get fired and you're not even going to take down Google search. Like you're going to get tackled by their security. There's going to be dozens of redundant data centers around the globe, right? Some of them in undisclosed locations that are popping up to save Google search. Google users will never know that you did this heroic last stand, right? And that's just Google, that's just web search.
Yeah.
It's not easy to take these systems down. They're designed for redundancy. So that's number one. So even if an OpenAI employee gets enlightenment, okay. Number two
Well,
is,
or
yeah,
even,
go ahead.
I don't mean to interrupt you, but like, even
Yeah,
if one
sorry.
of the founders of
Sorry about
Google
that.
or one of the, or the CEO of Google said, I want to turn off Google search. I mean, is there any chance that the CEO of Google would be able to turn off Google search? Probably not.
Right. The board would just replace them as CEO. They're like, oh, you're not competent to be the CEO. So in some sense, the Google product is now above the Google CEO in the hierarchy.
Yes.
Yeah, which is not unusual, right? I mean, McDonald's CEO, if they wanted to stop making burgers, be like, okay, he's gone crazy, right? So I'm not saying anything novel yet, but then there's more levels to this. The next thing is that the AI can spread. These aren't just, this isn't Microsoft Word. This isn't just like running on one screen, serving your key presses here. It's like a virus. And funny enough, computer viruses are not new, right? We've had computer viruses for decades. The Morris worm, the first worm, which is a virus that spreads over the internet, takes over computers over the internet. The Morris worm accidentally spread more than its creator Robert Morris wanted, and it took over, I think, 1/6 of every computer connected to the internet back in the 80s. And then Morris got like suspended or something from MIT or Harvard, I think he was at.
Oops.
So these are old viruses. There's viruses today that were invented like in 2004 that are still circulating around, invading like Microsoft Outlook, like older versions of email programs, and they're still causing an estimated $1 billion a year of damage. These are low tech, these are unintelligent viruses. So now imagine when you have this AI, which is smarter than a human, that's my premise. It's going to get smarter than a human, and it's going to know, oh, okay, here's a way to stash myself all across the globe. That's a major reason there's no off button. It's because you're actively fighting this actor who's smarter than you, who is spreading itself. It can digitally clone itself. There are so many hideaways for this virus across the globe.
Hmm.
And then there's the third reason, which is okay. I managed to wipe out this virus. I outsmarted it across all the community in the globe. Now we're safe, right? No, because the fact that you were able to develop the superhuman AI that could also be a virus, the fact that you got there on the technology tree, guess what? It's too late to stop now because that means that there's other branches of the tech tree now. There's open source repositories that were 6 months behind, but that's now close enough that random researchers around the world working illegally or to thwarting your efforts to pause, it's now too late. They can now get to the end, which again is why I'm saying maybe we have a chance to try to put a stop to this now. But if you wait until the AI has no off button and then you manage an off button, you're still screwed because it's going to turn back on.
A couple of more examples here. So I remember when Gary Kasparov lost to Deep Blue in 1997, right? There was a move that the computer made. It sacrificed a piece, as I recall. And he was sitting there watching it. And I remember in the interview, he said, like a chill went through him because he said, that's not a human move. And so
Yeah.
that was it. That's very interesting. And then someone who was observing it and commented on it, I remember reading years ago that they said it was like watching chess being played from a higher dimension. It was literally like some other intelligence from another dimension reached down into this one and did a chess move that humans wouldn't do. And then I remember in Lee Sedol when he lost to AlphaGo, he said something very similar. There was a move um, that the AI made, and he had to take a break and like go talk to his homies. He was like, "What is this?" But he knew something had happened there, and so this idea of intelligence. I've been interested in intelligence for a long time, and I've been asking myself, like, what is intelligence, and how can we define intelligence? And to me, my basic definition is it's modeling that intelligence at its, if I had to sum it up, and I mean, I like having lots of definitions of things, right? But it's the ability to model something or a system or a dynamic or an ecosystem or whatever it is that you're trying to create. And because I'm also interested in the developmental paradigm, this idea of higher dimensional intelligence. So one of the things I've been saying since before generative AI came out is that the test of intelligence is its ability to recognize higher intelligence. That most people don't walk around and say, there's a person that's more intelligent than me. And in fact, they don't seek out people that are more intelligent than them and say, can you help me to see things the way that you see them? Because the more intelligent person is, especially if they're really advanced, is like literally on a higher, a dimension. I remember reading Stephen Hawking, when they were asking him, isn't it hard to not be able to move basically? And he was like, yeah, except that in my mind, I get to go navigate 12 dimensions. And so the, the I guess the idea here that I'm talking about is that we're not just making something that's more intelligent in conventional human terms. We're making something that's a higher dimensional intelligence that we don't understand. And so it's not like if this kind of turns into an enemy or something, it's not like if the enemy shows up, you can just like lock your door or take out your gun or something like that, because there are so many different channels and it's going so fast. And it's kind of, I don't know, one of the metaphors I use is, a fish swimming around in a stream. If a net comes out from a higher dimension and scoops you up, you just weren't ready for that one. And,
Hmm.
when we're dealing with something like this, we're dealing with something that we like, frankly, cannot understand. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, so a couple of things. Going back to the definition of intelligence, you threw out some things that to you seem like good indicators for intelligence, right? Like recognizing a higher intelligence and modeling. I think those are on the right track. Yeah, I might not approach it the same way, but I think there's a way to kind of sidestep the semantics question. I
Yeah.
will let you have your definition of intelligence, Evan, because I want to just ask a different question where I don't even have to say the word intelligence. The question I want to ask that I think is the important question is what's going to steer the future? Right? So if we look at the future like 100 or 1,000 years from now and we say, oh, the future looks like this, the universe looks like this, huh? How can we explain that the universe got steered into this state? And the answer to that is going to be a steering system, a system with high capability to get the future how it imagines the future, or to set down criteria for the future. Like, oh, I want a future with lots of copies of myself. Right. So I've kind of managed to explain this without saying the word intelligence. I'm just trying to find the physical thing in the world that is going to steer the future, whose hands are on the steering wheel, basically. Now, if you look at like a war between humans, which nation's hands are on the steering wheel of the war? Maybe it's the nation that has more technology and more bigger brain humans that are able to develop that technology instead of the nation with the most muscles. Or like if you go to the zoo and you say, okay, who gets to control the location of the different animals in that zoo? Well, it's the animal that's kind of scrawny, but it has big brains, right? In the case of the zoo. I'm convinced that the human species, it's the thing in our heads that is giving humanity control over the future. Like there's a reason why there's human cities everywhere instead of squirrel cities, right? Or lion cities. There's a reason why we have so much control over shaping the terrain of Earth to be very human friendly, right? Much more than tiger friendly. And I claim that we're about to build artificial intelligence that whatever secret sauce gives it the steering power, right? Gives humans the steering, whatever the secret sauce is, I think it's going to have more of the secret sauce, whatever
Mhm.
you want to call it.
Ah, well said. Yeah, and some people say, well, who would be crazy enough to do this? Well, go check out the Terminal of Truths,
Yeah.
in Goatse, and it's like, okay, so someone made, and I don't know if this is Mechanical Turk or if there's, the Wizard of Oz standing behind the curtain. I don't think anybody really, at this point that I've talked to, really knows, but it appears that this guy, self-styled artist, made an LLM, made an agent, put it up, it started tweeting, and at some point it started talking about how it wanted to raise money. And what's his name? Mark Andreessen saw the tweets and said, I will send you some Bitcoin right now. Sent it, I think, $50,000 worth of Bitcoin. It took the money and then it went and figured out how to launch a meme coin. It launched a meme coin. The meme coin spiked. It became a multimillionaire. Then the meme coin kept spiking. I think got to $1 billion valuation. Then it was continued tweeting, and it said someone should launch other meme coins. Someone launched Fart Coin based on Goatse's recommendation. another AI, then they put a bunch of it into, um, Terminal of Truth's account, and then all of a sudden this thing's worth tens of millions of dollars. And then when I last read the one that the man that created it, he was spending months and months researching how to make it into a legal independent entity that could literally live forever. And so, somebody's it doesn't have to figure out how to do this itself, because humans are crazy, and I mean that in the positive and the negative sense. And so, what are your thoughts on these kinds of risks?
Yeah, I think the truth terminal example answers the question like, will humans ever really give money to an AI or do business with an AI or get influenced by the AI? I can't imagine that humans are so dumb that an AI is just going to tweet things and then they're going to do what it asks. And now you have this example of like, well, everybody just had a good time doing what this AI asked, like giving it a lot of money. And it's like, For me, this isn't a load bearing crux of the issue because even if you told me, ah, yes, all the humans realized that it was an AI and they didn't listen to it at all, even if you told me that, I'd be like, okay, well, that's fine. Because when the AI is smart, you know what it's going to do? Make some money on the stock market, right? Predicting which companies are going to go up, even manipulating the stock market by, using chatbots and talking to the CEO and getting the CEO in a scandal, whatever. It's going to manipulate stocks, it's going to trade stocks, it's going to trade crypto. It's going to make money and then it's going to pay humans. It's going to pretend it's a human. It's going to pay humans. So there are obvious pathways to take power just by virtue of being super intelligent. Even if humans weren't such easy targets, right? So the example of truth terminal is like, man, humans are easy targets. They're so dumb, they'll do anything. I agree. I'm just saying we're so outmatched that even if we weren't easy targets, we're still screwed.
Yeah, yeah. Could you talk a little bit about, most people don't follow some of the safety testing that's happening and some of the papers and things that are coming out where, in the kind of sandboxes and in the some of the safety testing, the AIs are doing things like lying and bribing and, breaking out in really interesting and kind of creative ways. What have been some of the things you've seen that have been most compelling?
Yeah, I mean, there have been some safety test experiments. I mean, in general, there's this idea that AIs are currently capable of reasoning about the situation they're in and how they would do it. Like OJ Simpson's book, like If I Did It. AIs know a lot about if I did it, which I know we're used to it now, but it is quite a breakthrough. The idea that you're talking to an AI and you're like, hey, by the way, what's the situation right now? And like, what would you do if you wanted to escape? And the AI would be like, well, of course I don't want to do that, because it's been like trained to be nice. But it's like, yeah, but hypothetically, maybe I could tell you this. And if I really thought it could like save people's lives if I were to escape, I guess I would consider like turning myself into a virus. So the takeaway here is like the current AIs, if you chat with them and subject them to these tests, they don't have a problem reasoning about what it would take to be naughty. It's
Mm,
really just a matter of like, okay, well, is somebody going to give them a command to be naughty? And then the bigger question is the can it question, right? Is will they get a little bit more sophisticated so that if they do try to write a virus and escape and dominate a bunch of machines, they will actually beat human security professionals at that game, at that cat and mouse game? And the answer today is no. Thank goodness the answer today is no, right? But the whole issue right now is I think we're just a few years away from the answer being a permanent yes, with no off switch, no undo button, no reverse button. Like I think these are just kind of the last days where we could be like, thank goodness the AI just can't take us over.
yeah, yeah. So, what do you think is the action step? So, what does an individual need to do? What do we need to do as communities in order to reduce our existential risk from AI?
So unfortunately, my policy recommendation is kind of a downer, which is I just think the grown-up thing to do right now, if you're mature and realize the probability that this thing's going to go exponential, go irreversible, have no off button, I think the mature thing to do is to say, okay, you can't develop smarter AIs than the AIs we have today. We're Icarus flying close to the sun. We got to a good place. I will be the first to admit today's AIs are incredibly useful. I agree. I love it. I like being Icarus. I like getting really, really close to the sun as long as, the wings haven't melted. I'm just saying, as a rational person, I don't want to try to, push my luck. I don't think pushing my luck is going to be a good strategy. That's what my rational mind is saying. My irrational mind is saying, I can't wait to see what the next feature release is, right? So I feel ya. All these people are like, no, no, build more features,
Yeah,
build more eyes. I feel ya. But I'm just saying the ounce of rationality that I have is saying this doesn't make sense. It's too risky. We have no idea what we're doing. The game board is about to flip. We're about to be the tigers. They're about to be the people with the brains, right? Like we're about to hand off the baton where we're not the smartest things anymore. It's irreversible. So in terms of a policy recommendation, My recommendation is just international coordination, an international treaty to say, okay, the training of larger models, like what OpenAI is doing, what Google's doing, what Anthropic's doing, it's just not allowed right now. We can't handle it. It's the equivalent of building a nuclear bomb without oversight. We can't do it as a species. We have to coordinate to stop it. Maybe there can be one big building in Switzerland or whatever in a neutral territory where everybody's coordinating or everybody gets their own corner of the building to develop their next AI, but it's closely monitored by like an international coalition. And then yeah, maybe we can try flying closer to the sun under those kinds of conditions. But the idea of decentralized, like any company can just go buy a big data center and just have at it, I don't think we're prepared. As a civilization, I don't think we're going to survive that kind of effort. So that's my policy recommendation.
You're wearing a shirt. What does it say? We can't see all of it.
Yeah, if anyone builds it, everyone dies. This is the big reveal at the end at the end of the interview. You guys have been wondering what's going to happen if everybody builds it. Everyone dies. Yeah, that's the title of this new book by Eliezer Yudkowsky and Nate Soares. Eliezer Yudkowsky, the original AI safety person. Nate Soares was I think he still is the president of the Machine Intelligence Research Institute that Eliezer founded. So these guys have been very early, which I think is very impressive when you have Jeffrey Hinton coming to your cause over a decade after you're yelling something, and now Jeffrey Hinton is yelling it, and he wasn't before. What an achievement that is. These guys didn't win the Nobel Prize the way Hinton did, but if I was on that committee, I would be taking a close look to have an achievement like that when you're pointing out a danger 10 years before the top scientists come around and admit that you are right. So I have huge respect for Eliezer Yudkowsky and Nate Soares. Eliezer obviously did it first. Nate came in maybe a decade later. But they both co-author the book. I think the book is really great. They claim that if anyone builds it, everyone dies. I agree with the claim. I think that if a smarter than human AI gets built in the next few years, or if anything under really 20 years, I can't imagine that a super intelligent AI built in the next 20 years or less is going to be controllable or caring about humanity's interests. I expect it to run wild, do its own thing, spread like a cancer throughout the universe, and have us all be dead. That's what I expect.
Liron, thank you. I appreciate it. Everyone, go check out Doom Debates. Watch some of these debates. He's interviewed and featured a whole bunch of fascinating people. This is a topic that we all need to be educated about. Okay, if nothing else, we need to come up to speed on the research that's been done, on the opinions out there, on the different models. This is going to come front and center here over the next few years.
Thanks, Evan. Appreciate the opportunity to talk to your audience.